Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to today's Daf Hayemi, Maseches ARACHIN Daf Yudalid. We begin at the brand new parak at the Mishnah, which is 7 lines from the bottom on Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Says the Mishnah, Yesh be'erachin lahakel ulahachmer. In matters of erachin, you can have kula and chumrah. You can be easy and difficult, which means to say that the erach system is based on a fixed, flat rate, as set forth in the Torah, based on gender and age, irrespective of the person's actual market value. So if you pledge a certain person's erech, okay, you're going to donate that value to the Beis HaMikdash. It's not based on actual value. So even if he's worth very little, a very productive person, but if the erech prescribed in the Torah for that age group is a higher amount than his actual value, that's lahachmer. That's being strict. And it goes the other way, lahakel. Suppose he's really worth more than the actual rate in the Torah. In this case, you're getting away with less. So it can go either way, up or down. Yesh be'erachin lahakel lahachmer. Right? Because whenever you have a fixed rate, unlinked to the actual value, well then, if luck, it can go both ways. It can be a kula or a chumrah. Another example of this type of fixed rate system, unrelated to actual value, is the rate that the Torah prescribes with respect to buying back a sadeh achuza. A sadeh achuza is a field which is family owned. It's an estate. And you are magdish it. You gave it away to the Beis HaMikdash. And you come back to redeem it, to buy it back. There's a set rate. 50 shkalim per an area called Beis Zera Chomer. So a place you can plant a chomer, which is a kur, huge amount, 30 sa of sa'ir. So barley. So it's a fixed rate, irrespective of the actual productivity of the farm or the market value of the field. So once again, it can end up being a kula. It could be to your benefit, or to your, or more expensive than you expected, right? Another example, you have a habitual gorer, an ox who's known to be dangerous and goes and kills an eved, a slave. Fixed rate, 30 shekel. Irrespective of the eved's actual market value. So again, it can be a kula or chumrah depending on his actual value. Another example, a person forces a woman to interact with him or convinces her, so there is a fixed fine, 50 shkalim of a mitzvah shemra, or if a fellow spreads false information about his wife. So once again, these are fixed rate penalties. Lahachmer, it can sometimes be less than you expected or more than you expected because it's a flat rate. And now we go back to the first example and explain it. So we said yesh be'erachin. In terms of erachin, sometimes it can be up or down. Lahakel ulahachmer keta, for example, echad sheherach es hanosh b'Yisrael. Whether you pledge the erach of the most striking person, the most impressive amongst the Israel, who theoretically could be worth more than the erach of the Torah, ves hakar she'b'Yisrael, or the most ugly one of Israel, who's essentially worth less than the fixed rate. Either way, you pay out the same amount. Rashi points out that's the rate for a male between 20 and 60 years old, irrespective of his productivity, of his talents, of his market value. However, instead of saying Hari Erech Alai, which is a Chamishim Selah payment, he said Hari Dam of Alai. I'm committing to his actual worth. Then, of course, Noisin Eshavyai, then he pays out the actual value to the Beis HaMikdash. Yesh be'erachin lahakel v'chu, ulahachmer ketzad echad sheherach v'chu. Mishnah refers to the subject of your erech being a Yisrael. The best, the worst, right? You pay the same amount. Yisrael in. We limited it to a Yisrael discussion. But apparently it wouldn't apply to a guy, so you can't turn the guy into the subject of your erech. You can't say erech, the guy upon me. Lema mas nisen te like Rabbi Meir. Perhaps our Mishnah is not in line with Rabbi Meir. This now we had a Mishnah back in the beginning of the Masechta. Rameh is just the opposite. A guy can be nerach. He can be deemed the subject of your erech. You can pledge his erech. Aval marach, he himself cannot pledge. How does that work with our Mishnah, where it seems that a guy is not going to be subject of an erech? I feel it a mayor. No, our Mishnah can perfectly go like a mayor. And who adin afilat gicham nami. Truthfully, a guy can also become the subject of your erech. So why did the Mishnah prefer a reference to a yid? Allah, we turn to the next one. Milsa. The Mishnah is teaching us something, by the way. Another side point. Don't get involved in praising a guy. The Mishnah wanted to highlight the fact that a fixed rate is not dependent upon his impressiveness or lack of, right? In order to get into that, the Mishnah had to refer to a yid. You're not allowed to admire a guy. You're not allowed to express admiration or praise for a guy. As Rav taught us, Osir. Pasuk says, Rashi brings on the second line, you can't attribute the chen to them, grace. You're not allowed to admire a guy on account of the person, his actions, his talents. You're not allowed to praise and admire a guy. So you have to be very careful. It's very very tricky. You can refer a good plumber to, for a job, but you can't actually praise the person or admire him. Certainly not to idolize him, right? Also, the Rambam explains the reason for this is because it can cause a person to draw close to a guy, to be attracted by a guy, to associate with him, and to learn from his ways. So keep back, right? Also, la'adam sheyam, a person not allowed to express and say, "Come and noah, look how handsome Canaan this guy is." So, in order to avoid any sort of issue of Leisachanim, the Mishnah stuck to the yid, the nicest yid, the ugliest yid, to highlight the halacha. Says the Gemara, okay, you can't, admire the guy, but still, listening, the Mishnah could have still said it back and forth. As Hanosh Yisrael, could have contrasted the nicest Yisrael with the ugliest guy. As Achar Shabbat that you can do, right? So why didn't the Mishnah refer to a Kanani in that context? In order to also teach us that you can make an erech on a Kanani. Says the Mabachad Umakamayri. The Mishnah wanted to stick to one nation, not sort of go back and forth between two nations. But really, the Mishnah doesn't go back and forth between two groups of people. Later on, we're going to have a story about a woman. She's Hagdoila Shebekuna. We contrast the most prominent of the Kehanim, Vesaktana Shebiyisrael, or the most lowly of the Yisrael. So again, we're contrasting members of two different groups. Well, it's still different. Hasam Chadumuhu. Over there, a Kohen, Yisrael, ultimately it's all in the family, it's the same nation. Elo Magdish, the Kach, Kaddish, Kehan, it's Tvei. True, the Kehanim have an added element of holiness, but ultimately we all, it's all a family, it's all the same nation. Rather than going from a yid to a guy, which is too much of a, jump. Another answer why the Mishnah specified only an example of a yid, because the rest of the Mishnah applies only to a yid. So we just, kept it on that same track. I did the Kabbalah Mishnah Sefer, since the Mishnah wanted to continue on and discuss Sadeh Achuzah, the halach of Sadeh Achuzah, which is only applicable to a yid who has property in Eretz Yisrael, etc. The Yisrael, the Mishkachas, only applies to a yid, and not by a guy. So the Labnei Achuzah, they don't have Achuzah. That's why the entire Mishnah focused on Yisrael, but truthfully, the erech concept could apply to a guy as well if he's the subject of your erech. Okay, next example, a fixed flat payout system is B'stei Achuzah. And once again, it can end up being up or down relative to the actual value. For example, Echad HaMagdish B'cholas, whether you Magdish a field in a place called Cholas HaMachos. Cholas is surrounding, like a machar, like a circle. HaMachos is around the city, the populated area, so the land there is not so valuable and so productive. Echad HaMagdish, or a person was Magdish Pardesois of the vineyards of this exclusive place, Savasti, the highest quality area. So irrespective of the actual value, when you come back to buy it back, Noisin, how much do you pay? Zera, Chaymer, Sa'irim, the area where you would plant a Chaymer worth of Sa'irim, you pay a flat rate, B'chamishim shekel kesef. That's because it's a Sadeh Achuz, it's a family plot, so it runs this track. But Ubesadeh Mikna, suppose it's a purchased field, it's not really yours from way back. You bought it from someone, you magdish it. Notice in the Shavi, in this case, when you buy it back, it's based on actual value, rather than the flat rate, which is limited to Sadeh Achuz. Blazer says, no, Blazer Omer, this flat rate system applies to both types of fields. Blazer Omer, Echad Sadeh Mikna, Echad Sadeh Achuz. So what then is the difference between the two? Ma bein Sadeh Achuz and Sadeh Mikna. Any difference between these two fields? There's a slight difference. Not in terms of the initial rate, but the added fifth. Shebesada Achuzah, if the owner, who is Magdish, his own Sada Achuzah comes back to Hegdish to rebuy it, who knows in Chomish, he adds a fifth, as per the Pasuk. Pasuk says, Vim Goy, Al Yigal, Asad, Magdish, he adds a fifth. But if it's just a Besada Mikna that he's buying back from the Hegdish, Ein in Chomish, he need not add a fifth. Amar Afuna. So although we speak about the flat rate for the Sadeh Achuzah, but let's say Higdish Sadeh Malei Ilonis. He donated his field to Hagdish, but it's full of trees as well. So, question, do we work on value-based redemption, or is it based on the $50, an acre redemption? The flat rate. Shupoidam, when he redeems this this package, the fields and the trees, so he has to write two checks. First, he redeems the trees in terms of their actual value. And then the property, $50 an acre. Interesting. So, according to Rav Huna, we look at it like two separate donations. The trees deserve their own redemption, actual value, and the karka, 50 shekel per base zerach mesayrim. Alma kosar Rav Huna. Apparently, Rav Huna holds that he's very generous. Adam magdish, when a person is magdish, by and yafa with a generous eye, magdish, and his intention was that in fact we should treat them as separate entities when it comes to redemption. Esvei Rav Nachman have a kasha Rav Huna. We have a Mishnah. A Mishnah we just learned. Echad HaMagdish b'chodes HaMachos. V'echad HaMagdish b'pardei says, okay, planted vineyards full of trees. Sabasti, how much do you pay out? Flat rate, despite the presence of those trees. Nice and base zera chaymes erm. Flat rate b'chamishim shekel kesef. We don't obligate you to write two checks, one for the trees and one for the Hamar lei ruila pardisis kamina. The Mishnah doesn't mean it's full of vines. It means that it's property suitable for planting of high quality vines. But if there were actually vines there, separate check for the vines. Ace becomes another kasha to Rav Huna. You say it's two separate redemptions. Base zera. The pasuk says this is the rate for the base zera. Only the base zera. Perhaps that only applies to a property, to a field intended for planting, plants. What about trees, vineyards? Sadi Gefanim, vines. Sadi Kanim reads. Sadi Lanis trees menayin. How do we know that the same rate applies to these types of entities? Pasuk says Sada Mekal applying to all types of variations. No, so what do we see? It's just a flat rate for the entire field with its trees. No separate checks. Amarle Achinam, he says, of course you do. Poida v'chayzer poida. The Brisa didn't mean to get away with just one check. The Brisa meant, of course he has to redeem the trees separately in terms of value. And then $50 per acre. And the Chiddush is, despite the fact that we have trees there, it doesn't change its designation, it doesn't change its rate. It's still the 50 shekel per rate. Ace becomes another kasha to Rav Huna. So the Brisa presents all kinds of variations of Hegdish. Hegdish shloshei lonis. A fellow donated trees, nice big trees, planted appropriately, which means to say the appropriate ratio. Mimata asar l'beis, employing a formula called asar l'beis. Rashi explains. So they're planted far enough, close enough from to each other, so that if there would be 10, they would be dispersed, evenly dispersed throughout a base, which is 50 by 50 amma tract of land. That's considered a properly planted tree. Not too close, not too far. In which case, Rashi says, Kol karka shebeneim tzarech lehem. It becomes like a tree farm. They need they need the land between them. There's no extra land, and they're not too close together. They're grown properly in the right proportion, with the right space to nurture them properly. So now the land is sort of serving the trees. It's all one big package, one big entity. So although he just donated the trees, in this case, since they have a good relationship with the land beneath them, it's really all one connected entity, and we treat it like an orchard. When you magdish the trees, it comes with the property. Automatically, the property goes along to Hegdish with the little trees that propped up between the big trees. So basically, it's one big pack, one inseparable package. So now when he comes back to buy it back, what's his rate? Paida base zera chaymes erim b'chamishim shekel kesef. Okay, it's 50 shekel per, base zera chaymes erim. Because it's a sada achuza, which has that rate. Pachas mekanu yesr. Okay, suppose the trees were not planted in this arrangement. They're too far apart. Proportionally, it would be less than 10 per base sa'ah. Or Yasser al-Kain, they're too crowded. Proportionally, prorated, it would be more than 10 per base sa'ah. In this case, it's not called a Sada Ha'ilan. It's not considered a proper orchard. So true, the trees are Hegdish, but not the property. Another example, instead of being magdish 3 at a time, one tree, another one, so it wasn't really presented as a package, as a sada ilan, like an orchard, in which case, in all these situations, so in this case, only the trees are given away, not the property, the many trees between. Furthermore, even if he ultimately gave it all away, the trees and the property, but in sequence. First the trees that were not planted in this, 10 per arrangement, just random trees, and then he decided, I'm going to give away the property as well. So in this case, we treat them like two separate donations. It's not one package. So when he redeems, two separate checks, two separate processes. And he redeems the trees as per their actual value. Then the property, $50 an acre. So what's the kasha? Because if we go back to the beginning of the Brisa, when he was magdish the trees with the karka together, what does the Brisa say? No separate checks. Flat rate, $50 for the whole thing. As opposed to Rav Huna, who required two separate checks. One for the trees and one for the property. Perhaps he'll suggest, no, the Brisa didn't mean one check for all. Brisa meant, of course, first he has to pay out for the trees, the actual value, and then the flat rate for the property. Well, you can't say that. Well, that's already discussed in the Seif in the last cases of the Brisa, right? That he does two redemptions. Apparently the Reisha, the first case in the Brisa, loy, is not so. Rather, it's one payout for the entire thing. That's a kasha Rav Huna, who says he meant generous. He meant to give it away in a manner, in a format which requires full redemption, two checks. Allah Hamani Rab Shimon, you're right. Rav Huna was going like the Shita, that a person is generous when he's magdish. That's the Shita's Rabbanah, but Rab Shimon disagrees, and his Shita is what's reflected in this Brisa. The Amar says, magdish bein ra magdish. When a person's magdish, it's the minimum. The minimum. The Sani, we find it in the Mishnah and the Brisa. Hamagdish es sadegdish es kula. Tanakam says, when a person gives away the field to Hegdish, everything included, everything. Ayin yafeh, Shimon no. Lo Hegdish, so the actual land, but in terms of other features, the trees, no. Lo Hegdish, only certain specific cases, like real big veteran trees, which are sort of so entangled and entrenched in the karka, but otherwise not. El Charav HaMurkav is old carob tree which is ready for grafting. A sadana shikma. Shikma is a sikma, S-Y-K-M. It's a construction beam tree. It has huge multiple trunks which are chopped and used for construction that would regrow. So it's called a sadana shikma once it's been chopped and all that. So this is an old veteran tree that's part and parcel of property, inseparable. So that goes along. But otherwise, a person just magdish, the minimum. As opposed to Rav Hunu, who's going like the Shita de Rabban, a person is very generous. So that requires a larger payout. But going to Rav Shimon, the minimum. You Rav Shimon? Okay, so if we're going to Rav Shimon, the Bryce is following his opinion. And therefore only requiring a minimal payout to redeem it, a mosef. Now we have an issue with the next part of the Bryce. The Bryce continues. Listen to this. Furthermore, a fellow was magdish trees without the property. And then he followed through with the property. Higdish karka. So really, two ways to look at it. In terms of the donation, where things were holding when he was donating, you're right, there's two separate donations. Trees is trees and property is property. But now, it's all coming together. Right now, it's one entity. Hegdish owns an orchard. Land with trees. What does the Brisa say? What rate of redemption do we apply? The earlier rate. We treat them separate. We don't bundle them together as per their current status. When he redeems, one check for the trees, one check for the property. The trees, according to their value. The comes back for another check and pays for the property. Base, zera, chaymer, so'irim, b'chamishim shekel kesef. The problem is like this. It's Reb Shimon speaking. Well, we find that Reb Shimon elsewhere holds when we have a choice. Do we look at it based on where it was holding by the Hegdish or where it's holding now? According to Reb Shimon, now. Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, we should focus on the moment of pidyon, what's happening now. It's one big entity, redeem it as one field, $50 an acre. Let's redeem the trees on account of the land. Don't separate it. It's one big package. How do we know that Reb Shimon holds? We focus on the present status. We know that Reb Shimon holds. We focus on where it's holding at the moment of redemption. Now the Gemara is sort of going to veer off to a different kind of case, and we're going to make our way back to our sugya, but basically the kasha is, why are we focusing on what was instead of where it's now? The Gemara is going to answer, well, the case that's coming up soon, it highlights Reb Shimon's opinion is specific to that case. He has a pasuk, but it doesn't apply to our case. In our case, of course, you can apply the rate based on where it was during the Hegdish, and that explains the Brisa why he has to issue two payouts, one for the trees, one for the property, because they were donated separately. Okay, that's going to be the conclusion. In the meantime, let's find Reb Shimon. Where is Reb Shimon saying Basar Pidyon? Shamin Reb Shimon does Basar Pidyon. Nisanya. Menayin Lokeach Sadeh Mi'aviv. How do we know in a case where a person purchased? He purchased a field from his father. Ultimately, he's going to get it upon his father's passing, but he bought it from him. So technically, it's a Sadeh Mikna at this point. Eventually, it's going to be a Sadeh Achuz. It's going to be it's going to be owned, family-owned plot. But at this point, it's a field that he purchased. So the question will be, which redemption rate will be applied if he's magdish it, right? Do we treat it like a Sadeh Achuzah? Because potentially, it's slated to become his when he inherits his father. On the other hand, currently, when he's magdish it right now, after purchasing it, technically a Sadeh Mikna, wasn't yet inherited. So he bought it, the big disha, and he gave it away to Hegdish. But then his father passed away. So technically he inherited it. How do we treat it? Minayin, how do we know he treats it like a Sadeh Achuzah? So we give it to him like a Sadeh Achuzah, because ultimately now it's his as a family estate. And we apply that $50 rate. Talmud Loymar, we know it from this pasuk. Only if it's a strictly purchased field, then we don't apply the $50 rate. Which is no way a Sadeh Achuzah. Then we go based on actual value. Sadeh, a field, she'ena ru'uya, which is not suitable, it's not fit, it has no potential to become Then you redeem it based on actual value. As opposed to this field. Although technically he purchased it, but fact is, when he was magdish it was already roy. There was potential to become sadachuz upon his father's eventual passing. Reb Shimon, in which case we apply the 50 shekel rate. So again, despite the fact that during the Hegdish, the moment of transfer to Hegdish was not yet a sadachuzah, but the fact is right now, it is, and now he's coming to redeem it. We focus on current status, sadachuzah status. Okay, so bottom line, see that according to Shimon, when there's a choice between looking at the moment of Hegdish or the moment of Pidyon, what do? We determine based on the moment of Pidyon. Okay, let's move on. Rameir disagrees. Rameir Aimer, that's going a bit too far. Minayin Lukeya, but the fact is, when he was Magdashid, it was still a Sadeh Mikna. Why would it change into Sadachuzah? Rameir Aimer, rather, I'll limit it. Minayin Lukeya Sadeh Vumeis Aviv. What about a case where he bought the field from his father, then his father died, and then he was Magdashid, when it was already inherited? Okay, in this case I agree. Since it was already a Sadeh Achuzah when he was Magdashid, how do we know that it has the status of Sadeh Achuzah? And he redeems it based on the fixed rate. Talmud return to base. The same pasuk that we mentioned. But he limits it to this case. Sadeh she'ena Sadeh Achuzah. A Sadeh Mikna is one which is not a Sadeh Achuzah, it's just purchased, it's not really his, from the family. Yotzazu, as opposed to this field, the field of today, which although he purchased it, but once his father died, she Sadeh Achuzah, which is already considered Sadeh Achuzah, and we treat it as such, despite the fact that he took possession of it upon purchasing. We ignore that part. It's now been converted into Sadeh Achuzah, and we treat it accordingly. So again, we have a son who purchased a field from his father. His father passed away, and then he was Magdashit. That's a Sadeh Achuzah. So says Rameir. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon add. So not only in that case, even if he was already Magdashit and then his father died, since at the moment of Pidyon it's a Sadeh Achuzah, we treat it as such. V'ilul Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. But according to the other opinions, afilu Ikdisha, v'achakach meis'av. Even if he was Magdashit and then his father passed away, Sadeh Achuzah, we treat it like a Sadeh Achuzah. My time, why? What is that based on? It's a big chiddush. It's a stretch, right? Imasham Kra is based on this pasuk. Look at the Rameir with the Asa. From the pasuk you can only derive the minimum. You can't stretch the pasuk beyond, the minimum. The pasuk is obviously adding, right? Expanding the concept of Sadeh Achuzah to another case. Okay. At the most, you can apply it to Rameir's case. He purchased, father passed away, now it's Sadeh Achuzah, now he's Magdashit. But who's to say we could expand it to the other case as well, to Reb Shimon's case? Purchased it, was Magdashit, then his father died. Too bad, too late. At the moment of Hegdish, it was a Sadeh Mikna. Elalav Mishum Dazal was a Pidyon. It must be that it's based on a logic. Reb Shimon understands that the Sadeh Achuzah status is based on what's happening now, when I'm coming to redeem it. And now, since it's his as a Sadeh Achuzah, we treat it as such. Okay, so then back in our story with the trees and the property, why don't you look at it based on current status and treat it accordingly, and one check for the whole thing? Amar Rahmar Yitzchak, no, it's not based on logic, it's based on a diuk in the pasuk, which only applies in this case. It's not a general concept that we follow the moment of Pidyon versus Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Krash Chavadash discovered the pasuk. Krash Chavadash. If the pasuk is limited to Rameir's case, look to Rachman, the pasuk would say simply, Im es stay miknasa, shlech uzasa, stay mikna, which is not nachuzah. My mistech misade. Why add the word misade, mistech? Was that an extra word to highlight that Sadeh she'ena ru'uya li Sadeh Achuzah? Sadeh Mikna is one which doesn't have the potential. It's not anticipated to become a Sadeh Achuzah, as opposed to our fellow who bought his father's field. So although he was already magdish at that point, but since from the get-go it was something which was anticipated, it was slated to become his inheritance, slated to be reclassified as stei achuzah, in which case it has that status all along. So if his father died, eventually he gets the stei achuzah rate. Okay, as opposed to our story, where a person was magdish the trees and then the property, so of course he has to issue two payments, one for the trees value and one for the property, $50 per chemisar. Despite the fact that now it's already one package, because we don't focus on now necessarily. In fact, it was given as two separate donations, which requires two separate redemption processes. Okay, so in a nutshell, a stei achuzah has a flat rate, 50 shekel per base zerach HaMesa'erim, irrespective of the actual farm value. Now, according to Tanakh, it only applies to stei achuzah. Rav Huna adds that when a person is magdish, he's buying yafim magdish. If he gives away an area full of trees, an orchard, it requires two separate payouts, one for the actual value of the trees and one for the base zerach HaMesa'erim, 50 shekel for the field itself, based on ayin yafim magdish. But according to Reb Shimon, ayin ra magdish, it would be one payout, the 50 shekel payout for the entire package, unless we have we have all those cases where it was two separate donations, and we have to treat it, separately, two separate redemption processes. That took us into a discussion of a fellow who was magdish a field that eventually he inherited. We treated it like a stei achuzah, according to Rameir, only when he was magdish it as a stei achuzah, according to Reb Shimon. Even if he was magdish as a stei mikvah, eventually it became a stei achuzah, we treated it accordingly. Continues the Gemara. Marav Papa. Okay, so we speak about the flat rate, the 50 shkalim per set area. Let's say it's not really a plantable field. Higdish Trushin, he was magdish this rocky soil, this rocky tract of land, which is not really fit for cultivation. In this case, poiten b'shavyan, when he redeems, it's face value, it's actual market value as opposed to the flat rate. My time, you know why? Base zera amar Achmana. That flat rate applies to a base zera, an area meant for planting. V'hani lav b'nei zriyanin, as opposed to these, which are not fit for that purpose. Lo yiga'alam. Now suppose he failed to redeem it. Now typically, in that case, the caretaker of the hegdish would give it, distribute it to the Kehanim when Yovel comes. Rashi says he didn't redeem it, and the Gizbar, the treasury, sold it to somebody else, and now it's Yovel, it's backed by the hegdish, and the halach is it's given out to the Kehanim for them to keep. And the question is, sure, but does that apply to this type of situation where it's not really a plantable field? Lo yiga'alan. The answer is yes. Yoitzin, look, they add the word the Kehanim, v'yovel. In this case as well, it's given to the Kehanim. My time and why? Sada amar Chman kodu. The Torah instructing the hegdish to give the Kehanim the field uses the word sada rather than base zera, which is the term used by the flat rate. Here it just says v'haya hasada b'tzeisa b'yovel. It's given to the Kehanim. Look, technically it's also a field. It's not very valuable, not very productive. So it's also included in that system. My time of sada marachmon kodu, any type of sada. Now, when a person sells, up until now we spoke about being magdish a field. When you sell your field, the halacha is you have to allow the buyer to enjoy the field a couple of years before you go back and force them to sell it back to you. At least 2 years. What about if it's a rocky, unplantable type of field? Do you have to wait for 2 years? You have to wait for two seasons to pass before approaching the buyer for a buyback? Machat Trashin, he sold these Trashin. Nigolan Pachas Mishtei Shanim. There is no 2-year wait before buying it back. My time, you know why? Torah says, wait for 2 crops, 2 seasons. But this field is not really, up to that. It's not fit for growing, for planting. So you don't have to wait 2 years. On the other hand, suppose he did not rebuy it from his customer. The halach is that really when you buy a field, it's only yours until Yovel. So in this case, the seller did not come to buy it back and stayed in the hands of the customer until Yovel. Does it revert back to Ruvain, the seller's possession? Yeah, despite it not really being a plantable field. My time, you know why? Because in terms of restoring ownership, the pasuk says v'shavla chuzasai. So it goes back to its original ownership. Okay, it goes back to the original estate holder. Well, after all, it's still an estate, as non-productive as it may be, but technically it's still labeled as an achuzah. Right? So he deserves to get his field back. By time so he's restored to his estate. Even this field qualifies as an achuzah. Next case, Higdish Ilonis. A fellow was magdish just trees. Okay, specifically just the trees, without the property beneath it. How does he buy it back from Hegdish? As per actual face value. My timer. Why not employ the 50 shekel flat rate system? Base zera amarachman. Torah speaks about a plantable field, not trees. Trees are just like any other items. On the other hand, if he failed to buy it back from Hegdish, right? In this case, it will not be given to the Kayhanim, as opposed to a field which is typically given. In this case, not. Once again, Torah speaks about a sada given to the Kayhanim. But not trees. Let's say he sold trees to his friend. Do you have to give that customer 2 years? Do you have to wait 2 years before buying it back? Yes. You can't compel him to sell it back to you less than 2 years after the sale. My time, why? So even though they're not really sadeh, but the Torah does not specify sadeh. The Torah says 2 seasons, 2 crops, 2 years of growth. And even trees can produce, so it qualifies and you have to wait. What about Legalan? He did not redeem it from his buyer. Now it's down the road, it's Yovel. Does the seller get it back like he would get a field back? No. In this case, it doesn't go back to my time. You know why? Torah speaks about restoring the estate, as opposed to trees which don't qualify. Let's go back to the halacha of Higdish Ilonis, Paida B'Shavyan. So he donated just the trees only. How does he buy it back from the Hegdish? By offering actual value. So there is no karka involved. Amai, why? Why is it only trees? The fact is that the trees should go along with the land beneath the trees. So not only the trees should be kaddish, the land, the earth right below the trees, under the trees. And therefore when he goes to be paida, it should be based on a land rate, which is the 50 shekel rate. Perhaps he'll say, he only gave away the trees and not the property. Now they tell us, by a sale, when you sell a tree, a fellow who sells a dikla, a palm tree, to his friend, the guy acquires not just a tree. The customer is now in possession of the land directly beneath the tree as well. Mishipayla, from right under the tree, time until all the way to the depths of the earth, all the way to China. So when you're Magdish, assumingly the same thing happens. No, lav mit marla, but haven't we explained on that halacha? It's not an automatic transfer. When you sell trees, it's trees. But we speak that he has a claim, machmas taina. He says, look, we spoke to include the karka as well. So in that case, he gets it all the way down. But when you just magdish the trees to the hegdish, it stays just trees. So they miknos and shavya. So in contrast to the stay achuza, where it's a family estate that you're magdish, redemption system is based on the flat rate, 50 shekel per the area that you can plant the core of Sa'ir. But by Sadeh Mikna, where you bought the field, not really yours as a family estate, you bought it, so if you magdish it, sure, you can be paid there, but nice and shavi based on actual value. Toner Rabbanan. So the pasuk by Sadeh Mikna reads like this. It says, the kohen will calculate for him as michsas, the amount of erkach of the value. And that's what he's going to pay out. Ma Talmud Leimer. So what is the pasuk coming to teach us? I mean, isn't it obvious that you buy it back by offering the actual value? The answer is the Vishanemah, because we know that by the Sadeh Achuzah there is a flat rate. Vishanemah Zerachim Yisairim, right? B'chamishiv shekel kesef. So perhaps it applies to this case as well. Yochel. Av Sadeh Mikna Kain, perhaps even if Sadeh Mikna goes by the same rule. Talmud Leimar, Michsas. Michsas teaches us no. Sadeh Mikna, it's about actual value, as opposed to flat rate. Plaza Oimer, no, he disagrees. As per he did in the Mishnah, right? The Sadeh Mikna goes by the same system. How do I know? Because there's a Gzera Shava that links the two. By Sadeh Mikna it says V'chishav, and likewise by Sadeh Achuzah it says V'chishav. But never Lahan V'chishav, Malahan, just like over there, it is a davar katsav, a fixed rate. Afkan davar katsav. Likewise over here by Sadeh Mikna it's a fixed rate system. Now the Rabbanan disagreed, right? They differentiated. Is it because they don't adopt this Gzera Shava at all to link the two? Or perhaps they do adopt Gzera Shava to a limited sense. That although in terms of the determination of the rate, they're different, but regarding another matter, perhaps they are alike. Which other matter? L'chaimish halacha. See, by the Sadeh Achuzah, if the owner comes to redeem it, he has to add a fifth. Perhaps the same would apply to Sadeh Mikna through this Gzera Shava that links them. Or perhaps they're totally separate system and they don't match up. The question was posed like this: Rabban, is Gzera Shava? Do they hold of this linkage? They apply it to the Chaimish halacha, to apply Chaimish to Mikna just like Sadeh Achuzah, or less Gzera Shava, they at all do not hold Gzera Shava, less Chaimish, and therefore there's no Chaimish. By Sadeh Mikna, just like there's no flat rate, it's a different system than Sadeh Achuzah. Amarava, Mistabra, less Gzera Shava. Makes sense that they don't hold Gzera Shava. Why? And in which case, not only is there no flat rate for Sadeh Mikna, there is no Chaimish either. Why would I say that? Because the Torah already teaches us the Chaimish idea in a couple of places. That's one place. And also V'gabe Magdish Beisei. Fellow donated his home and comes back to rebuy it, he has to add a fifth. So it's a repetition in a sense, right? And what happens then? Whenever the Torah repeats something, it has a limiting effect. Otherwise, just say it once and apply it everywhere. Rubber stamp it everywhere, right? So the fact that it says it here and there, it has a limiting connotation. Now we have two psukim that converge on the same matter, repeat the same idea. When we have two psukim on the same matter, it's limited. And you can't apply it elsewhere. But according to the opinion that holds that you could rubber stamp even a duplication, so why are you limiting it? The answer is it's more than just twice. It's many times over. We find multiple citations of this halach to tell you that it's limited to those cases. Midigal Rahman, once the Torah presents the idea of the Chaimish, one time it's by B'maser, A person redeems his master sheni. But behema tahira, he redeems his kosher animal that he donated to the hegdish and got a blemish, right? Ubei behema tmeya, by the unkosher animal that he donated to the Bedek Habayis, to the maintenance fund, and he's coming to redeem it. So it's discussed over and over again, aside from so the achuz that we mentioned. Havali tuva, so it's a multiple, numerous citations of the same halacha ve'im elam to teach us that it's limited to those cases, and those cases only, in which case it does not apply to sadeh mikna. So bottom line, according to Rava, just like in terms of the actual rate, sadeh mikna is different than achuzah. Likewise, there's no chaimish by mikna in contrast to achuzah there is. And it's based on the fact that we have multiple citations of chaimish to tell you, stop there and don't apply it elsewhere. Concludes the Gemara, Tani Gava say the Rava. In fact, there's a brayta which supports Rava's assertion that there's no chaimish by sadeh mikna according to Rabbanan, but not based on his reasoning of the multiple citations, based on a different reason. Tani, we have a brayta. That's the pasuk by the sadeh mikna. So it's interesting that the pasuk refers to a word which sounds like erech, to teach us to connect the redemption of a sadeh mikna to the concept, to the erechin system. Just like by erechin, my erechin, there's no chaimish there. You pledge, you pay. There's no added fifth. Af sadeh mikna misim chaimish. Likewise, no chaimish by sadeh mikna. So the halacha is correct. Says the Gemara brought it based on a different reason than Rava presented. Okay, so bottom line, in terms of rates, sadeh achuzah is a 50 shekel per base zera chaimish sa'irim. But it has to be a plantable type of place, right? As opposed to the trushin, right, the rocky area that we discussed. By the trees only, again, there's no beis zera there. It's not a plantable area. It's trees, right? It's not a field. What about a chaimish? Yeah, if the owner comes to redeem his own field, he has to add a fifth. By sadeh mikna, both ideas do not apply, according to the Rabbanan, as opposed to Rabbi Lezer, who says that in terms of the rate, that applies to sadeh achuz as well, but as he said in the Mishnah, even he agrees that chaimish is limited to sadeh achuz. Says the Mishnah, another example of a flat rate, a non-fluctuating rate independent of the actual value or the actual damage that occurred. B'shar amud, right? We have a habitual gorer, a dangerous ox, that killed, Shemus' Eved killed an Eved Kanani. Okay, so he killed your friend's Eved. Torah sets forth a flat rate, 30, selah, 30 shekel, right? Irrespective of his actual value, or his productivity, or his talents, right? Lahakul lahachmer. So it can come across as being, more severe than you would think, or less severe, right? Ketzat, for instance, whether the animal killed the most impressive-looking, Eved, or the most ugly Eved, it's still the same rate. It's 30 selah. But Hamas ben Chayrin, let's say he killed a regular free man, regular Yid. In this case, it's not a flat rate, it's actual market value that he has to forward to the heirs. Third example, let's say there was an injury, whether it's to an Eved or to a ben Chayrin. In this case, again, there's no flat rate. He has to pay full damages as per the diminishment of market value. Now the Gemara figured that the halacha that he pays full damages only applies to a muad, which was the opening statement of the Mishnah. The muad only by a muad is the halacha that the owner has to pay full rate for damages, but not by an innocent ox who is not known to have a track record of violence. Is that true? That by a tam there's no full payment. You get 50% discount. Just like when the tam animal injures another animal, it's a 50% liability. So perhaps the same when he attacks a person, but tam boy. Well, that's unlike Rabbi Akiva. Perhaps we're not like Rabbi Akiva, who holds that when an animal injures another animal, if it's a shar tam that did it, 50% discount. But when it's interaction with a person, he gets billed in full. Let's say there was an entanglement between an animal and a person. They're battling away, and the Bezdin assesses that the net loss happened to the person. So the damage to the animal, offsetting the damage to the person, still ended up with a net damage to the person. That injured the person, will pay for the balance. Nezek shalim, full rate, full damages, no discounts. And he learns it from the psukim, right? That when there's a person involved, there's no 50% discount for the animal owner. Whereas our Mishnah seems to indicate otherwise. No, I feel Tam Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah can follow Rabbi Akiva as well. But then I feel Tam Nami. The truth is, even a Tam would be fully liable for damaging a person, 100% liability. The Mishnah did not mean to limit it to a muad. It's just that va'aydi dekabay misna seifa hemes eved hemes ben chayrim. It's just that in that next case there we had to speak about the we alluded to a case where the animal killed, right? It killed an eved, it killed a ben chayrim. Rashi says seifa doesn't necessarily mean literally seifa, the next part of the the last part of the Mishnah. Just means the continuation of the first part of the Mishnah. In any case, it was a reference to having killed an eved or a free person, which is really the subject matter of our Mishnah, to differentiate between the fixed rate and the non-fixed rate. Which is, that's specific to a muad. Only a muad has this flat rate system. The muad only applies to a muad, but not by a tam. But tam lemishkachas, it's not found by a tam. That's why the Mishnah, started off by a reference to a muad on account of that case. But in reality, the last case of the Mishnah of the chaval would apply to both tam or muad. In either case, if it involves injuring a person and damaging a person, he's chayiv nezek shalom regardless of whether it's a tam or a muad. Okay, we'll pick it up tomorrow, B'ez Hashem. In the meantime, what we learned, we spoke about the flat rate for the ARACHIN, irrespective of the actual value of the person. We spoke about the refraining from admiring a guy. We spoke about the flat rate of the Isadi Achuza as well. And we spoke about what happens when there are trees involved, according to Rav Huna, Ba'in Yafa Magdish. So there are two separate redemption processes, one for the actual trees, for the actual value of the trees, and one for the flat rate on the property. We have the opposing shita, that which is Reb Shimon, that we say Magdish Ba'in Roy Magdish. He has no intention on being so generous. Actually, you Magdish at a minimum. We spoke about whether we focus on the moment of Hegdish or on the status at the moment of Pidyon, regarding other matters as well. And then we spoke about the rocky field. How do we classify it? On the one hand, it's not really plantable. On the other hand, it's called a sada. It's called an achuza, but it's not really something which can make shnei tvuos, right? Back and forth. So it's sort of a mid-designation. We spoke about how to redeem the process of redemption on a sada mikna, and then proceeded to the next mission regarding a flat rate that applies to an eved as well. All the best to you, and atzlacha rabba.